I want to talk about sort of another midfielder, N'Golo Kante. We saw these rumours this week of a fallout between him and Lampard, very strongly rubbished by Matt Law, which is, I think, if one person you want to sort of rubbish a story, I mean, Matt Law was sort of right out there rubbishing these rumours. These rumours about Kante leaving have been present for about 3 years, and all of them get rubbished very quickly. I just wanted to ask you, because the debate around Kante about his positioning has been going on now for what feels like 5 years, but it's probably only about 2 years since Sarri arrived. Where do you see his sort of long-term future in Lampard's midfield? Because I think there is still that concern in terms of balance, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. He's an interesting player to have a problem with because, first of all, yeah, I shouldn't even spend a second on the story needing to be rubbish, but it's just funny that N'Golo Kante could have a falling out with anyone. I mean, I think that's hilarious. He's got to be the nicest person, apparently, ever known to man. Now, yeah, it's just such a weird. I always think Conte is a good subject for YouTube channels and podcasts because he does hopefully produce quality, respectful debate. Because I think the first season, when I say first season, that season under Sarri that produced a lot of debate over his position, it wasn't always the most respectful debate, even between pundits, because people were being really stubborn based on the previous facts that, hey, Conte has never played here before. And it became this whole thing about some people needing to remind others that he's never been a lone DM. Oh, but he's also never been an attacking eight, which sometimes he was with Sarri, but he wasn't. He was being the Alon guy from the Napoli days. So it created such an uproar from people who thought they had Conte figured out. And then whatever, I don't need to explain it to you or your listeners. But now I feel like it's settled down where we've seen that Conte, just having him on the pitch, no matter where he is, more often than not, he's going to do something for your team where you're like, wow, no one else will do that. That's very N'Golo Kante specific. I don't care if he's more of an eight. I don't care if he's more of a DM with a pair, a lone DM. He still is such a quality player to have on the pitch. But where can you optimize him, right? That's the conversation. Where can you optimize him? Where can you put him where it will kind of get the best out of him, but also maybe it will allow others to just do what they're best at? Like, can you make Conte where he does what he does best, but also everybody else can kind of just focus on other things? So what I just said there, that would kind of lend itself to, could he be a lone DM? Could he be the sweeper behind a bunch of good attacking players, cleaning up everything so he can focus on being a unique interceptor of the ball and tackler of the ball, and almost just like the first protection to a back four? Can he do that? And I know Frank tried to do that in the restart. I know Gilmore got injured and then Jorginho came into the side, but it was clear Frank tried that for a little bit. It was clear that he was going to try that. But I think we come back to the conclusion that Conte, to be truly N'Golo Kante, he doesn't need to be, or he shouldn't really be, disciplined to a spot. So, okay, maybe then he shouldn't be a lone DM, because if he's not disciplined to a spot and now all of a sudden you've lost possession, they hit you on a counter, you have nobody sitting in that area in front of the back four. So that could be problematic. So, Daniel, what I've been saying a lot on my podcast lately is I think it's okay at this point to say we don't know where necessarily Conte fits best right now. I know he does fit best somewhere in this side. Like, I did entertain early last season, hey, do you sell Conte? Do you start thinking about selling Conte? Not because I don't love him. My God, I love him. And Daniel, I'm sure you know, if you entertain that with a select few, they'll think you don't love him. But I did it purely from a business sense. Could you still get a decent return for him? Injuries are creeping up. Now, I think you've passed that point where it makes almost no sense to sell him, in my opinion, unless you really wanted to go, which I highly doubt that's the case. So now you think about, well, we're stuck with him. What a horrible problem to have. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. How can we use him? How can we best use him? So I think, Daniel, we're going to see him in a couple different roles consistently. I think sometimes we still could see him in a lone DM role. I still think that's something Lampard will try until he gets maybe his preferred DM, who's clearly not in the team right now. And then I do think we'll see him in a pivot. I just don't think we'll see him too much as a right-sided eight, if you will, in a 4-3-3. Like, I don't think we'll see a lot of that. So if he is out there with a Kovacic or a Jorginho, I think it'll be clear that those two are sitting a bit deeper. So, Mount, not to bring this back to Mount, we all know he would be best as an eight. I think he'll find his own way, hopefully, to occupy that area. But I've said for a while, I think others have said for a while, the team should and probably will be built around Kai Havertz. So I think when Conte is out there, yeah, he's probably going to be deeper than he was in the Sarri days, but I think it will change from him being by himself to him being with a Jorginho or a Kovacic. And Daniel, last thing, to him also not starting every damn game, because I do think Lampard has showed us a little bit so far. He has to be a bit more mindful about Conte and what he's dealt with. So, yeah, we could see him on the bench as a lone DM or a paired DM. That's my guess. Pretty cop-out answer.
No, I think that's probably the best answer you could give at the moment, because there's only been a little bit of this season, so it's not like we're halfway through the season, so you've had a lot of games to look through. Also, I think the problem was last season was we could never get that definitive answer because he was injured for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
So we never got a consistent run. So probably we may have got that answer if he was fit the full season, but Lampard had to adapt. He had to constantly change the midfield because Kante would get in the team for a few weeks, then get injured again. So the characteristics of that midfield would change dependent on Kante's fitness. I think there's a great misconception about Kante. Even in the early Conte days when he arrived from Leicester, I mean, that title-winning season, I was amazed watching him for Leicester, but then watching him live at the Bridge and how much he moved, how many positions he'd take up on the pitch. Even for Conte, I think there's this misconception that him and Matic were just sat very deep constantly. Look at the goal he scored against Man United. There were many times in that season where he'd drive forward and get into attacking positions. I think it is so limited to just say he's a holding midfielder, he's a Makelele, because he's not a Makelele. And if you put him in that role, you are limiting one of the best midfielders in the world. I mean, for me, Kante is one of those players that if he's on form, he can change the game. He can. Even if he doesn't score a goal, for me, he is that good in how important a midfield is. He can elevate our game so much. So I think it is limited to put him in that DM role. I just wonder the pivot, which is what Lampard seems to be going with a 4-2-3-1 at the moment. And I think that's very much hoping to elevate Kai Havertz's game at number 10. I just wonder, Jorginho, Kante, it was a very nice balance against Palace. I just am concerned when we come up against, say, Southampton this weekend, a team that presses higher, how that works out. I don't know if you share a similar concern, because I think that against low blocks, a player like Jorginho really works well with Kante, but I think that will be the litmus test of whether that is going to be a sort of a longer term pivot.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I mean, you can think about why Lampard could look at Kovacic, Jorginho, and Kante players individually that he all rates in their own way. I mean, certainly Kovacic and Kante, he rates Jorginho. It's just very specific, which it is with a lot of managers in Jorginho and probably a lot of people in Jorginho. But yeah, individually, he can decide, oh, this player could be good. This player could be good. This player could be good. But I just don't think there's a combo of players he feels fully comfortable with. I've said it a lot. When Kante and Kovacic are on paper, you look at that and it's like, oh, that's really nice. And then you think about how they're both at their best. When they're both at their best, they're being unique players. They're players that actually, to play at their absolute best, you shouldn't give them a specific assignment of you have to stay in this area, because they will be the people to break up a pass. They'll intercept it, but also they'll want to dribble with it a little bit in their own way, of course. But you make a good point about Kante. He's not always somebody who just needs to hold. Like, he will do some unique things even with the ball once he intercepts it. So, yeah, just the combos aren't there. I won't talk about Declan Rice needlessly, but I know Lampard was probably drooling a bit thinking about Rice, who could be a bit more of a classic DM, paired with a Kovacic or a Kante, because Rice would allow Kovacic and Kante to really be themselves a lot more. Now, Jorginho does in some instances, absolutely. You've kind of highlighted it. If it's against the Palace, somebody who's going to sit back, Jorginho actually can be quite a good player in that scenario. But yeah, you're going to face teams who are just going to say, no, we're not going to allow that. We're going to press you high. We're going to do the same thing you do to us when you have the ball. So it raises some concern there with Conte. So I think in the short term, you'll see, when you see that style opponent, I think maybe you will see Kovacic, because, of course, he can be press resistant. He's good at, of course, receiving the ball and getting out of sticky situations in his own way. Now, Daniel, I love it from Kovacic. It usually produces a really nice YouTube video as well. Some of the ways he can get out of high up pressure, double teams. However, we also have seen Kovacic in the last 6 months probably produce a high amount of turnovers in dangerous areas. Now, we haven't really been burned by them a lot, but it does highlight that that is not what you need from a DM first and foremost, the ability to dribble out of dangerous pressure near your own box. So I think when it's Kovacic and Kante, Frank will just hope that the combination of those guys and people helping around can break high presses that are being, of course, attacked against them. However, when you see Kante at the lone DM, I do think you'll see Mount a bit more as a proper 8. I don't know if that's where his starting position will be, but I do think that they've already set up a little bit of a template where someone like Mount can go help N'Golo in the moving the ball forward, the progressing the ball forward when there is a little bit of pressure, when N'Golo would be looked at to do, of course, the facilitating forward job. We've already seen Mount kind of help him out there and do the industrious, as I like to say, the industrious sides to being an 8, where this is, I keep coming back to this. I don't know if we'll see this against Southampton. I don't know how soon we'll see this, but if we do see a team, an 11 with Kante, just Kante, no Kovacic or Jorginho, I think we'll see, no matter how they align, I think we'll see Mount operate a bit more in his best area as an 8. And maybe Kai would be maybe an 8 on paper. But Daniel, I've been really repeating this a lot. The pitch does not have to be parallel on each side. So it does not have to be balanced. So yeah, maybe it would look like Kai would be parallel to Mount, right? And then you got N'Golo here sitting behind them. But I really think Kai will be a little bit more forward and a little bit, honestly, more central towards his 10. And Mount will be a little bit more further back on the left, still in front of Kante, but doing that industrious job where he's getting the ball from N'Golo, he's pushing forward, he's finding players in pockets. And I think that can work against unique oppositions. But I don't know how often Lampard's going to want to go with that now while the team is still kind of new, even in front of him. But I do think mid to later in the season, when Lampard knows, Pulisic and Ziyech and Werner and Kai, they're clicking right now. They're clicking, and we're going to score some goals no matter what. If you see a mid-table to lesser opposition, I think Lampard would feel comfortable enough probably running out that team and having Kante be the guy deeper and Mount doing the industrious job. But it's interesting, Daniel. I had to kind of give you a long-winded answer because I just think based on the opposition right now, Lampard does see, he wants continuity in the team, I'm sure, but I just don't think that he will have to change the midfield based on the opposition, whereas you hope he doesn't have to do that with other areas on the pitch.
Well, it's like what we were saying with Mount. You have a big squad for that reason, and I think in this season of all seasons, having a big squad is the most valuable ever, really. And in terms of fitness, because I just realised looking at the schedule, we've got Southampton on Saturday, you got Sevilla on Tuesday or Wednesday, Man United away, and then it's the next Champions League game. I mean, it literally is back to back to back. And these players have just been on international duty as well, so there's gonna have to be rotation within there. So as you said, all of those sort of midfield sort of selections Frank could choose, I think we could see them in the coming weeks.